Attention please. The second day of the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021 will immediately begin. Your audiences, please kindly set your Zoom is muted throughout this event. Your cooperation is appreciated.
Mohon perhatian, acara hari kedua The Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021 akan segera dimulai. Kepada seluruh hadirin kami himbau untuk mengatur Zoom Anda pada posisi mute selama acara berlangsung, demi kelancaran acara. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Salam Indonesia Maju. The Honorable Mr. Sandiaga Salahuddin Uno, Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia. The Honorable Mrs. Niwayangiri Atnyani, Secretary, Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia. The Honorable Mr. Faisal, Director of Bandung Institute of Tourism. The Honorable Mrs. Enda Trihayuning Tias, Head of the Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021. The Honorable Dato Dr. Amar Abdul Ghaffar, Malaysia Tourism Promotion Award Adjunct Professor from University Teknologi Mara. The Honorable Professor David Hein from Asia Pacific for Events Management. The Honorable Professor Seleni Matus from George Washington University. The Honorable Professor Theodore Benetatos from IMI Switzerland. The Honorable Dr. Karen Miranda Fernandez from Asia Pacific for Events Management. The Honorable Dr. Haji Dani Ramdan MT, Chief Executive of Regional Agency for Disaster Countermeasure West Java Province. The Honorable, the invited guests, and all the judicator in this event. We would also like to welcome all participants and presenters of the Second NHI Tourism 2021. Yang terhormat, Bapak Dr. Haji Sandiaga Salahuddin Uno, PBA, MBA, Menteri Pariwisata dan Ekonomi Kreatif Republik Indonesia. Yang terhormat Ibu Dr. Anda Niwayangiri Atnyani, MSc, CHE, Sekretaris Kementerian Pariwisata dan Ekonomi Kreatif Republik Indonesia. Yang terhormat Bapak Faisal, MM.Par, CHE, Ketua Sekolah Tinggi Pariwisata NHI Bandung. Yang terhormat Ibu Endah Trihayuning Tias, Esos, MM.Par, Ketua Pelaksana The Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021. Yang terhormat Dato Dr. Amar Abdul Ghaffar, Adjunct Professor Malaysia Tourism Promotion Board, University Teknologi Mara. Yang terhormat Profesor David Hein dari Asia Pacific Institute for Events Management. Yang terhormat Profesor Seleni Matus dari George Washington University. Yang terhormat Profesor Theodor Benetatos dari IMI Switzerland. Yang terhormat Dr. Karen Miranda Fernandez dari Asia Pacific Institute for Events Management. Yang terhormat Bapak Dr. Haji Dani Ramdan MT, Ketua Penanggulangan Bencana Daerah Provinsi Jawa Barat. Yang terhormat seluruh tamu undangan dan judikator pada acara ini. Serta yang kami banggakan seluruh peserta dan penyaji The Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021.
Good afternoon and welcome to the second day of
The Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021. The Rebound of New Tourism Era, Bandung Institute of Tourism. It is our honor to be your master of ceremony for today. I am Anthony Samuel.
And Lamunda Aretafai will be your master of ceremony for today. Ladies and gentlemen, allow us to read several sequences of today's agendas.
Hadirin yang terhormat, izinkan kami untuk membacakan susunan acara pada hari ini.
The fifth plenary session.
Sesi pleno kelima.
The sixth plenary session.
Sesi pleno keenam.
The seventh plenary session.
Sesi pleno ketujuh.
Conclusion by the Chief Executive of the Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021.
Pembacaan laporan dan hasil kesimpulan pembacaan laporan dan hasil kesimpulan dari Ketua Pelaksana The Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021.
Closing speech by Mr. Faisal, Director of Bandung Institute of Tourism.
Sambutan penutup oleh Bapak Faisal MM.Par CHE.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session is the plenary session 5. In this session, we will be having Mr. Dani Ramdan with the topic Disaster Risk Reduction Efforts on Earthquake and Tsunami Threat in Pangandaran Tourism Area.
Hadirin yang terhormat, pada siang hari ini kita akan memasuki sesi pleno kelima. Sesi ini kita akan mengundang Bapak Dr. Haji Ramdan, Bapak Dr. Haji Dani Ramdan MT, Badan Ketua dengan topik Disaster Risk Reduction Efforts on Earthquake and Tsunami Threat in Pangandaran Tourism Area. Kepada Bapak Dr. Haji Dani Ramdan MT, dipersilahkan.
This session will be conducted by Mr. Reza Nuriski, Lecturer of Bandung Institute of Tourism as the moderator.
Sesi ini akan dipandu oleh Bapak Reza Nuriski MSc, dosen Sekolah Tinggi Pariwisata NHI Bandung. Kepada Bapak Reza Nuriski MSc, dipersilahkan.
Thank you very much, Anthony and Lamunda, for the great master of ceremony of today. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all the participants of the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021, with the theme of the rebound of the new tourism era. My name is Reza Nuriski. I'm a lecturer at the Bandung Institute of Tourism, and I will conduct this session as a moderator. And on this session, we will have 30 minutes of presentation from our speaker and 15 minutes of the question and answer session. So for this occasion, we have Mr. Dani Ramdan, Dr. Dani Ramdan, Master of Engineering. He is the Chief Executive of the Regional Disaster Management Agency of West Java. Ladies and gentlemen, as we know that Indonesia is an archipelago which is located between the tectonic plates, or we can say that a megathrust on the earth. And it is made that Indonesia is a country that should prepare for any unpredictable circumstances, such as earthquakes, tsunami, and all natural disasters. So those force measures situation bring us to a question: how to reduce the disaster risk in tourism area in Indonesia, especially in the tourism area, and how to manage the disaster risk, especially in West Java. So, move along to the theme. We would like to welcome Mr. Dhani Ramdan as Chief Executive for Regional Disaster of Management Agency West Java. I would like you to deliver your presentation, Doctor. Time is yours.
Okay. Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to me to be able to speak in this forum, and I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to Mr. Faisal, Head of Bandung Institute of Tourism. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Dhani Ramdan, currently inducted as the Chief Executive of the Regional Disaster Management Agency of West Java Province. In this opportunity, I would like to present disaster risk reduction effort in Pangandaran tourism area in West Java. Next slide, please. West Java is the largest province in Indonesia in terms of population, reaching over 48 million people in 2020, with the composition of population as listed on the slide, as well as topography, temperature, rainfall, and the number of districts or cities and villages in it. Next. West Java Province is based with fertile nature and beautiful panoramas in various corners of its territory, in the form of mountains, valley, forests, rivers, and the coast. Therefore, in the West Java region, there are many natural tourism objects, as well as the diversity of regional cultures. Next. But behind its natural beauty, West Java also has various high risks of natural disasters, because in West Java there are 7 active volcanoes, as illustrated in this slide. Then there are also 3 active faults. In addition to that, because of its high rainfall and mountainous topography, West Java is also prone to flood and landslide. To give you ideas about how prone West Java to natural disaster is, let's look at the picture or map. The picture or map is Multihazard Map of West Java. The redder you see on the map, the higher the chance of natural disaster happening in the area. Brighter or greener area have lower probability. Speaking about tourism and natural disaster, on this occasion, I will focus on effort to reduce disaster risk in the Pangandaran tourism area, which is located in the southeast part of West Java. On one hand, Pangandaran has now become the prima donna of West Java tourism with its beautiful white sand and wonderful beach. But on the other hand, Pangandaran has the high potential for disaster, namely the earthquake and tsunami. The risks come from the megathrust tectonic activity that lies in the Indonesian Sea south of Java Island. In mid-September 2020, a research publication from ITB said that there would be a tsunami as high as 20 meters in Pangandaran as a result of an 80.7 magnitude earthquake from megathrust subduction area. This publication caused panic among the people of Pangandaran, West Java, and Indonesia. As a result, tourist visits to Pangandaran dropped dramatically. Especially in October 2020, In fact, an earthquake occurred in the Southern Sea, although on a relatively small scale, 3.5 magnitude. This slide illustrates how the megathrust in South Java is formed. From the picture, you can see that Indo-Australia plate or oceanic plate and Eurasian plate or continental plate pressing against each other. This movement will create pressure and will be built up over time. When the pressure can no longer be held back, there will be a sudden large release of energy, an earthquake, which because of its massive power can cause a high tidal wave called a tsunami. The tsunami threatened the southern area of Java and western Sumatra, as well as Bali and southern parts of Nusa Tenggara. Research team from ITB has made hundreds of scenarios for the possibility of a megathrust earthquake that will occur in the southern coast of West Java. By far, the worst scenario is a magnitude of 8.7 earthquake and a depth of 30 kilometers in the West Java, Central Java segment, which is marked by red color on this slide. The result of this scenario are illustrated by the model depicted in the slide. The modeling results show the possible tsunami inundation areas, which include the majority of Pangandaran tourist area and residential area. The tsunami inundation result itself varies from 0 meters to over 10 meters. Of course, we need a better resolution map to see in detail the effect of the tsunami on this area. According to the tsunami modeling result, we can estimate how long the tsunami waves will reach the Pangandaran tourism area. The tsunami waves are estimated to take about 23 to 37 minutes to reach the mainland. This means that people in the area have a golden time to save or evacuate themselves to the safe point from the threat of tsunami. We can also see the estimate inundation in the area and the estimate height of the tsunami waves in each district. With this estimation, we can determine the plan and route for disaster evacuation in Pangandaran tourist area with better accuracy. In the Pangandaran tourism area, the temporary evacuation site or TES, marked with a star in the slide, has been built by the Minister of Public Works in the form of a 4-story, multi-story building that can protect residents and tourists in the event of a tsunami attack. Besides that, several other temporary evacuation points, atau TES, and final evacuation point, or TEA, have also been prepared, which utilize natural high elevation area, marked with a green triangle in this map, equipped with a sign indicating the direction of evacuation to TES and TEA. From the modeling made by the ITB research team, we can also predict the total population affected by the tsunami, which is estimated to be 42,000 people in the event of an earthquake with a magnitude of 8.7. By using previous earthquake scenario, we can also predict how big the amount of loss that will be experienced by the people of Pangandaran Regency. Of the 5 sectors assessed for the loss value, the public infrastructure sector is estimated to experience a loss of 49.38% of the total loss. Then the productive economy sector will experience a loss of 46 0.15% of the total loss. Several efforts have been made by both the West Java Provincial BPBD and the Pangandaran Regency government to reduce disaster risk and build community-level preparedness. Temporary evacuation sites have been rehabilitated to optimize their function as a shelter and the event of a tsunami. When there is no disaster, TES will function as a place for volunteers to gather, train, and in the future, even serve as a means of tourism-based education about the earthquake and tsunami. This TES can be visited by tourists for recreation, as well as gaining insight or knowledge about tsunami. This effort will serve as a pilot model for the Resilience Center, as stated in the blueprint for West Java Resilience Culture Province, which is a guideline for all disaster-related stakeholders in realizing a disaster resilient culture in West Java. In 2019, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we together with the community, private sector, and universities conducted the Tsunami Disaster Resilient Village Expedition in the Pangandaran area to educate and provide outreach to communities in tsunami-affected area. Socialization is carried out the village office, at the market or fish auction, at tourism object, at mass and community recitation place, and other place. During the expedition to these villages, disaster resilience assessment activities at the village level carried out by village officials and villagers itself, with the guidance of West Java Regional Disaster Management Agency officer and volunteers. Apart from that, they were also facilitated in a participatory manner to make maps of tsunami evacuation routes, point of temporary evacuation location, and permanent evacuation. The result of their discussion will be included in their village tsunami contingency plan. In addition to that, we educate students in school how to carry out self-rescue in the event of a tsunami. We hope in the future they can become a new generation who have more awareness and ability to live in harmony with disaster. During the expedition, the tsunami disaster villages, tsunami disaster information boards were also placed in various strategic sites, both at tourist sites and in other public facilities, such as in markets, terminals, city parks, and so on. We hope that the community can be more aware about the potential danger around them. We also carry out tsunami disaster mitigation activities by planting trees that can act as barriers, filters, and breakwaters when a tsunami occurs, thereby reducing the destructive power of water in the event of a tsunami attack. At the end of the Tsunami Disaster Resilient Village Expedition, we held an entertainment stage featuring local folk arts and documentary films about earthquake and tsunami preparedness. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, the effort to increase community preparedness for earthquake and tsunamis was still carried out even too by limiting participants and implementing health protocols. These efforts ensure hotel and restaurant business actors to be able to recognize earthquake and tsunami threats and to prepare themselves and tourists so as to make tourists feel comfortable visiting their hotels and restaurants. We intensify online socialization and education at every opportunity through webinars, clubinars, and other online discussion in collaboration with various disaster mitigation related communities, universities, and the media. During the pandemic, we also conducted a common post exercise, or CPX, with limited participants to increase the preparedness of the official of the relevant institution in dealing with earthquake and tsunami disaster, to check the readiness of the early warning system, or EWS, and the speed of response to the signal that appear from the EWS. We are currently proposing tsunami-affected villages in Pangandaran district, especially those with a lot of tourism potential, to get a pilot project and recognition from IOC UNESCO as a tsunami-ready community. There are 12 indicators set by IOC UNESCO that must be fulfilled in order for Pangandaran to receive tsunamis ready recognition. Hopefully, by the end of 2021, this recognition can be obtained so that people and tourists visiting Pangandaran can travel more comfortably, because the community and local government in Pangandaran are recognized as having reliable disaster preparedness and mitigation system. In the COVID-19 pandemic situation, the Pangandaran Regency government also continues to actively participate in breaking the spread of COVID-19 through counseling activities, implementing health protocols, and providing vaccination for residents and tourism business actors. The government also encouraged hotels and restaurants in Pangandaran to get clean, healthy, safe, and environmentally, or GHSE certificates. This effort seems to have paid off because the case of COVID-19 in Pangandaran are relatively small compared to other agencies and cities in Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last slide. Hopefully, this explanation can provide an idea that behind the beauty of the Pangandaran tourism area, there is a large enough potential for disaster, but with various mitigation efforts and increased preparedness that are continuously carried out, tourism activities in Pangandaran can continue to develop. And tourists feel safe and comfortable in their vacation, and hopefully will come back to Pangandaran in the future. Thank you very much for the great attention, ladies and gentlemen. May all those we have shared be beneficial for all of us. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. Ramdan, for your insightful and informations about the disaster risk reduction in the tourism area, especially in Pangandaran, West Java. Okay, so we are moving now to the question and answer session, which will be answered directly by you, Mr. Ramdan. And we have already we have already one question, I guess, from our participant here, and the committee has already selected some questions. Okay. Well, actually, while waiting for the questions, I would like to ask you, Mr. Ramdan. Okay. So I have already the questions from the participants. The first one is from Rama. He's coming from the Bandung Institute of Tourism. Good afternoon, sir. I would like to ask you some question. Why is there so much development for tourism activities, especially in disaster-prone areas, while the safety levels of the tourists is not guaranteed? And what should you do to minimize this as a tourist area planner? Can you hear the question, sir?
Oke, saya jawab bahasa Indonesia boleh? Mungkin ditranslate ya.
Okay, okay, you can. I will translate your reply. No problem.
Ya, jadi memang masih banyak kegiatan pembangunan dan kegiatan pariwisata di area-area yang sebenarnya rawan bencana. Karena area-area rawan bencana itu memang adalah site-site pariwisata yang bagus, biasanya punya pemandangan yang bagus. Nah, kita sebenarnya sudah dari BPBD sudah memberikan map ya, peta rawan bencana ke semua instansi perizinan. Namun nampaknya ini di instansi perizinan ini masih perlu dorong koordinasinya, dan kami akan melakukan langkah-langkah yang lebih proaktif agar aspek perizinan di daerah pariwisata ini bisa lebih tegas diterapkan.
Okay, the question, okay, the reply is, as we know that the tourism destinations normally in the high risk of the natural disaster area, such as, for example, in this case, is Pangandaran. Is it true, Mr. Ramdan? And also that's why actually we have to maintain and we have to make regulations concerning the map and the map of the tourism destination as well. So that's why we know that even though the tourism destinations is located on the high risk disaster area, but with the good regulations and clear regulations and from the government, we can make it better. Is it something like that, I guess?
Ya, kemudian tambahannya di samping memang sisi peraturan akan kita sebenarnya tegaskan, tetapi memang karena di daerah wisata tersebut sudah banyak aktivitas dan bangunan, jadi kita juga bisa mengembangkan living harmony in disaster area gitu. Itu dengan mengembangkan infrastruktur ataupun arsitektur bangunan yang memang tahan gempa, ramah terhadap tsunami, dan juga preparedness, kesiapsiagaan dari para pelaku pariwisata dan wisatawannya dalam menghadapi bencana.
Okay, so actually to overcome the disaster risk, even though there are already many developments and many buildings in the tourism area, with the living harmony or with the building who can make the disaster, the risk of disaster lower. So the authorities and the people who live in the tourism area, they can reduce the risk of this disaster by building a building who is not really have a big impact if there is a disaster who come to that place. Okay, so kind of that situation. So living harmony is an important aspect to maintain and to handle the situations. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ramdan. And now we are still opening the questions. The second one from Hendra Manurung from Pajajaran University. Do you find any difficulties and barriers in doing socialization of tsunami natural disaster mitigations amongst local people in Pangandaran tourist destinations? And how BNPB Daerah Jabar overcome it? And how effective virtual natural disaster socializations work within local people surrounding communities? Thank you.
Ya, ada dua pertanyaan. Saya jawab pertanyaan pertama dulu. Bagaimana apakah ada kesulitan dalam mensosialisasikan ya ketangguhan bencana ataupun kesiapsiagaan menghadapi bencana di daerah Pangandaran? Ya, karena pada awal mitigasi bencana ataupun sosial bencana itu sering dianggap ini menakut-nakuti, terutama bisa mengganggu kegiatan pariwisata. Bahkan kami pasang papan peringatan itu beberapa dicabut karena dianggap ini nanti menakut-nakuti turis, Pak. Jadi ya caranya ya harus terus-terusan, kita tidak bisa hanya sekali saja, tapi berbagai cara dan berulang kali. Lalu caranya ada yang informal, ada formal, bahkan ada yang pakai panggung kesenian tadi ya. Jadi berbagai cara supaya pesan ini bisa masuk ke masyarakat, khususnya para pelaku wisata.
Okay, so the first, how to socialize to the people who lives in the disaster area. Well, to make before the socialization, normally the people will be feared because of the socialization from the BPBD Provinsi Jawa Barat. That's why actually the agency, the management agency to the disaster risk management agency, they regularly maintain the socialization to keep the populations, the people who live there, to feel safe and not to be feared because of this socialization. That's why actually the regularly maintained socialization should be done as much as possible by the management agency. Okay, and the second one,
untuk
sir?
Pertanyaan kedua, bagaimana efektivitas untuk sosialisasi secara virtual? Memang kalau untuk virtual ini masih aksesnya terbatas di masyarakat yang memang sudah melek digital ya, umumnya begitu, di kalangan anak mudanya begitu. Tapi kalau untuk masyarakat tradisional di pedesaan, kami memang masih perlu banyak sosialisasi secara langsung. Tapi dalam masa pandemi ini, jadi kita melalui para pemuka masyarakatnya, para perangkat desanya, lalu mereka yang kemudian menyampaikan kepada masyarakat desa. Nah, bagi generasi muda pun kita coba berbagai variasi bentuk sosialisasi, tidak hanya webinar, bahkan kita bikin TikTok misalnya, bikin Instagram yang menarik, lucu-lucu, tetapi pesannya adalah mengenai kesiapsiagaan menghadapi bencana.
So if I can really conclude for these second answers. So the first one, even though there is a limited people who can understand for the socialization, especially the virtual socialization from the management agency, but by approaching the stakeholders in the area, and after the stakeholders who will deliver the message from the management agency, it will maintain the socialization and it will make it effective. And the second one, the management agency, they tried also some social media such as TikTok to make a socialization, to deliver the message on the socialization. Thank you, sir, for your answers. And if we have also the third questions. Yeah, the third questions we have from Liu Xiana from Medan Polytechnic of Tourism. How many you suggest to promote Pangandaran as a safe destination to tourists? In your opinion, what is the future opportunity of disaster tourism in Indonesia, especially Pangandaran? Thank you very much.
Oke. Jadi untuk promosi Pangandaran, bahwa Pangandaran adalah daerah yang aman, memang kita tidak bisa menutupi fakta bahwa memang ada potensi bencana, khususnya tsunami dan gempa. Dan sebenarnya hampir seluruh daerah pariwisata kita yang indah-indah pemandangan itu tadi punya potensi bencana. Oleh karena itu, informasi mengenai kesiapsiagaan, yaitu mitigasi sistem, itu harus betul-betul dikemukakan dan memang harus disiapkan. Makanya kami tadi mengambil proyek recognition Tsunami Ready dari lembaga internasional, yaitu UNESCO. Nanti UNESCO akan menilai selama sepanjang tahun ini, nanti kalau memang memenuhi 12 item syarat sebagai Tsunami Ready Community, maka kita akan diberi sertifikat. Nah, sertifikat itulah yang akan kita publikasikan kepada seluruh stakeholders bahwa Pangandaran tsunami ready. Demikian juga untuk aspek kebencanaan lainnya, kita siapkan secara sistematis dan terus-menerus agar semua pihak, khususnya wisatawan, bisa tetap yakin ke Pangandaran karena semua pelaku wisata di sana, hotel, restoran, kemudian pemandu wisatanya semua sudah dilatih menghadapi bencana.
Okay, even though the natural disaster potentials in Pangandaran or in West Java, they have a very big potential such as earthquake and tsunami, but with the information such as the mitigation systems and recognition of tsunami ready from UNESCO, which will be delivered by the management agency of West Java. So it will keep the people insured and they feel safe to visit Pangandaran. So the most important thing here is the certifications from the management agency to make sure that the tourism area is safe for the tourists. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ramdan, for your answers concerning this disaster risk mitigation in Pangandaran, West Java. And I would like to ask you, actually, this is my personal questions. And during this pandemic era, COVID-19, do you think that Pangandaran is already prepared to re-welcome tourists from another regions or even another country in Indonesia? Another country in the world, sorry.
Yeah, of course. Pangandaran sangat siap untuk menerima kunjungan. Selama masa pandemi ini, Pangandaran termasuk kabupaten terendah dari sisi positive rate ataupun kasus-kasus positif. Mengapa itu bisa dilaksanakan? Padahal turis pendatang banyak berdatangan ke Pangandaran. Itu karena memang penerapan protokol kesehatan memang sudah menjadi kebutuhan di sana. Jadi mereka sudah merasakan dampaknya 3 bulan ditutup total. Banyak perusahaan yang rugi besar, bahkan bangkrut. Nah, dengan pengalaman itu, ke sini mereka tidak main-main urusan protokol kesehatan. Kemudian juga karena Pangandaran ini kebanyakan bentuk wisatanya adalah outdoor, nah ini nampaknya dari sisi penularan relatif lebih rendah dibanding wisata-wisata indoor begitu. Jadi itulah mengapa Pangandaran demikian. Tapi sekarang kegiatan vaksinasi juga sudah kita prioritaskan untuk para pelaku usaha wisata. Kemudian juga tadi CHSE sertifikat itu juga kita dorong untuk bisa dimiliki oleh seluruh hotel dan restoran di Pangandaran.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ramdan. So the health protocols and also the vaccinations will make Pangandaran is rebounding again or rebuilt again for welcoming tourists from another region or even another country in the world. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Dani Ramdan. Dr. Dani Ramdan, Master of Engineering, the Chief Executive of Regional Disaster Management Agency of West Java. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your information concerning the disaster risk mitigation in West Java. So as our appreciation, we would like to deliver you a virtual certificate from us for the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021 with the topic of the rebound of the new tourism era. Thank you very much, Mr. Dani Ramdan, and we hope you enjoy this presentation. Thank you very much one more time. Thank you, Mr. Ramdan.
Thank you very much.
And the second one, we will take a picture together before I finish this session. Okay. The committee. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One more. One, two, three. Okay, thank you very much for coming and participating to the fifth plenary session of today by disaster risk reduction in tourism area Pangandaran West Java. Thank you very much, Mr. Dani Ramdan, for your time, and I will give it back to the Master of Ceremony, Anthony and Lamunda.
Thank you, Mr. Dani Ramdan and Mr. Reza Nuriski.
Terima kasih Bapak Dr. Haji Dani Ramdan MT dan Bapak Reza Nuriski MSC.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session is the plenary session 6. In this session, we will be having Dr. Karen Miranda Fernandez from Asia Pacific Institute for Event Management with the topic, Event Tourism Strategic Recovery Plan.
Hadirin yang terhormat, sesi selanjutnya adalah sesi pleno ke-6. Dalam sesi ini kita mengundang Dr. Karen Miranda Fernandez dari Asia Pacific Institute for Events Management dengan topik Event Tourism Strategic Recovery Plan.
This session will be conducted by Mrs. Priscilla Jessica J. Joseri, Lecturer of Bandung Institute of Tourism as the moderator.
Sesi ini akan dipandu oleh Ibu Dr. Anda Priscilla Jessica J. Joseri MSc, dosen Sekolah Tinggi Pariwisata NHI Bandung. Kepada Ibu Dr. Anda Priscilla Jessica J. Joseri MSc dipersilahkan.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, Ibu Dr. Karen Fernandez. First of all, I'd like to welcome all of you to the plenary session 6 of the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021 with the theme, The Rebound of the New Tourism Era. My name is Priscilla Jessica, a lecturer of Bandung Institute of Tourism, and I'll be serving as the moderator for this session. This session consists of 30 minutes of presentation and another 15 minutes of question and answer session. And on this occasion, we are going to have a very outstanding presentation from our prominent presenter, whom I believe will give insight and knowledge. Before the presentation begins, let me introduce the presenter, Dr. Karen M. Fernandez. Good afternoon, Dr. Karen Fernandez. How are you? Okay, let me introduce her. Dr. Karen Fernandez is an educator, author, practitioner, and international speaker in the field of events, tourism, and hospitality. She is the Vice President of Education and Accreditation of Asia Pacific Institute for Event Management, or called as APM, and President of APM Events Management Services. She's also the Vice President for Research and International Affairs and Dean of the College of Hospitality and Tourism Management of IMUS Institute of Science and Technology, Philippines. She's been appointed as visiting professor in many universities in Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Taiwan. He was a postdoctoral scholar at School of Events, Tourism, and Hospitality in Leeds Beckett University, United Kingdom. She gained a doctoral degree in business management, specialized in hospitality management, and master's degree in business administration, majoring in hotel and restaurant management, both earned at Philippine Women's University, Manila. Her research interests include event management, sustainable tourism, and hospitality management. She's been a speaker in a number of international academic conferences and a member of Scientific and Editorial Review Board of Journal of Responsible Tourism Management, Asia Pacific International Events Management Journal, and Journal of Tourism, Hospitality, and Travel. Dr. Fernandez is one of the book authors of International Best Practice in Event Management and editor-in-chief of International Journal of Sustainable Tourism and Hospitality Management. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Karen Miranda Fernandez, who will have a 30-minute talk about Event Tourism Strategic Recovery Plan. To Dr. Karen Fernandez, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon from the Philippines.
Good afternoon.
So first of all, thank you very much to Bandung Institute of Tourism for this opportunity. Should I share my slide or?
Yes? Can you try to speak again?
I haven't seen my slide.
Okay. Yeah. It's okay now.
Okay, thank you. So the unprecedented changes brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic are dramatically affecting tourism. So the new normal for physical events will entail thorough safety measures. So it's important to prepare accordingly. The Asia Pacific Institute for Events Management have developed a strategic recovery plan to help the industry navigate for the immediate future of events. Next slide, please. So before I proceed to my main topic, allow me to introduce our organization. Asia Pacific Institute for Events Management, or APM, is a professional organization established with the aim of professionalizing the Asia Pacific event industry. So APM is able to work with colleges and universities, including STP Bandung, to design and develop courses in events management. Next slide, please. So for this reason, the APM Academy was launched in July 2020, last year, to offer 3 certified courses for event industry. We have the APM Certified Event Planner. We also have the APM Certified Event Manager and the APM Certified Event Educator. So these courses are actually 100% online and can be studied 24/7, 365 days per year from anywhere in the world. So for more details, please visit our website at www.apm-ems.com/academy. Next slide, please. So in this figure, event studies, event management, and event tourism are defined as follows. So event studies is actually an interdisciplinary field that studies all planned events, encompassing event management and event tourism. On the other hand, event management is the process by which an event is being planned, prepared, produced, and evaluated. While event tourism is simply defined as holding events as tourist attractions, whether to create a favorable image, to expand traditional tourism season, to spread tourism demand evenly, or to attract domestic and foreign visitors. Next slide, please. So the event and the tourism industry has been the worst affected of all major economic sectors due to the worldwide outbreak of COVID-19. In fact, according to the Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, the restart of tourism means the return of hope and opportunity for millions of people around the world. Next slide, please. Therefore, UNWTO calls on governments, international organizations, and donor agencies to include tourism as a priority in recovery plans and actions. Therefore, UNWTO calls for financial and political support for recovery measures aimed at tourism, and to include support for the sector in the wider recovery plans and actions of affected economies. Political and financial commitments are key to ensure that tourism can lead wider economic and social recovery. As proven in past disruptions, on the back of the highly resilient nature of the sector and its ability to bounce back strongly. As the UN agency responsible for tourism and sustainable development, the UNWTO stands ready to provide guidance and support for recovery measures of its members, the private and public tourism sector, including organizers of tourism events and fairs. Next slide, please. So every crisis have actually phases. So every crisis situation is context specific. So including scale, nature, extent, time frame, affected sectors, and stage of the event. So we have the pre-event and predictive, prodromal, or the earliest symptoms. We also have the emergency, crisis, continuity, recovery, and resolution. For the first phase, of crisis, we have the pre-event and predictive, which has no indication as yet of the impending crisis, but time to be prepared and have a crisis management. Have a crisis management plan in place in the eventuality that an incident occurs. Okay, that's why in every event that we're organizing, risk management plan is very important. So next phase is the prodromal or early symptoms. In most cases, early warning signs are evident, so but are ignored or misinterpreted. So screening of media outlets can identify early warning signs. So now is the time to prepare or update plans and activate them or update training prepared to respond. Or prepared to respond. Can you go back to the previous slide? Thank you. Okay, the next phase is the emergency phase. So the emergency phase, the key rule of thumb does not make it worse. The safety of guests and staff is critical. Accurate and effective communications are important. Strategies and actions to protect the business need to be implemented at this phase. So its employees and the community it operates must be considered as well. The next phase is the crisis continuity. So the crisis is ongoing. What are short-term situations that can be implemented? The care for staff and clients is essential. Monitor the situation to see what the longer-term implications and or predicted duration will be. So prepare resilience plans. The next phase of crisis is the recovery phase. So in this particular phase, we have to establish recovery objectives and timelines, stratify and prioritize target markets, work with intermediaries and the public. We have to be positive and honest in communication, implement plans, treat media, including social media, as an ally, and demonstrate appreciation to others. So at this stage, I'll be focusing the next slides on the recovery phase. Since we're still far from the resolution phase, but the last phase of crisis is the resolution. So what are the actions to take recover as quickly as possible? So what lessons have been learned? Are you prepared for the next crisis? The rapid recovery often occurs after an event. So therefore, a range of actions can be undertaken during the event. So importantly, must be appreciated that consumers' confidence has been damaged and will not return until the event passes. Next slide, please. Next slide. Sorry. So a range of actions, as I have mentioned. So these are some of the actions, strategic actions that we have included in the strategic recovery plan. So first, forward book through vouchers and coupons to keep some cash flowing into the business. We can also arrange mutually beneficial terms and conditions with suppliers and make them part of the problem and the solution. Work out smart solutions and make real-time arrangement. We can also take the opportunity to restructure and open new avenues for business. While price cuts can deliver a brief spike in volume, they can also result in long-term pain for any business that pursues these strategies. So we can also renegotiate contracts with intermediaries and OTAs or online travel agents. Next slide, please. Okay, so recovery plans can begin during the event but must be implemented effectively post-event. So as academic, as part of the academics, what can we do? So first, we can volunteer our services as money is very limited. So we can also work collaboratively with others. So now is the time to cooperate and collaborate. So provide targeted research backup, including to inform policy changes. And you can also share your collective research with DMOs or destination management organizations and industry as well. And you can also promote in a different way to conduct tourism. Okay. Yes. Am I still audible? Can you still hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. Sorry, because I saw one message that my audio is not clear. So to continue, we also included some policies in the strategic recovery plan. This is as follows. We can rebuild trust in concerted and cooperative effort involving the different stakeholders, such as the government, the DMOs or destination management organizations, as well as the industry. And we can also reconsider the balance between volume and quality of target markets for tourists, develop system-wide recovery strategies. We can also develop system-wide crisis strategies, identify and focus on sustainable competitive advantages. We can also communicate the benefits of tourism to the local community. And we can also mitigate any tendency to tourist phobia and racism involving tourists from certain regions. Next slide, please. In terms of sustainability, so how do we do that? So we have to promote more sustainable actions and be humble and appreciate that the commercial tourism sector is a facilitator of experiences and not the experience itself. Tourism can be a regenerative industry locally, nationally, and internationally. So we have to encourage relevant policy development. Next slide, please. In terms of marketing, first we can relaunch the destination or the product. So in the case of the Philippines, actually late last year, our Ministry of Tourism endeavors to ensure the tourism resiliency of the country's prime destinations such as Palawan and Boracay. So through the full implementation of sustainable tourism development projects. So they started to open tourism last year, but unfortunately we're still not open yet for international tourists, but only domestic tourism. Okay, so launch packages and promotional specials that have been developed during the event, progressive market expansion aiming at cured markets first and then expanding to more markets. So we can also target loyal markets and work on the local MICE sector. We can also focus initially, as mentioned a while ago, the strategy from the Ministry of Tourism in the Philippines. No, so they started with domestic and nearby international markets. So thereby maybe the country boundary issues to deal with. Social networking is very important, no? Via Instagram, Facebook, and other social media platforms. And we can also focus on business travel, which is far less discretionary. Next slide, please. We can actually follow or integrate the PATA's 9-step marketing and communication process in our recovery plan. So PATA, or the Pacific Asia Travel Association. Okay, so the first step is to get the prime message out. So that we are already open for business and tourists are welcome and wanted. And step 2, we can set out the facts so that our destinations or our tourism establishment or hotel or tour attractions or flights are already operating, outline the restrictions and limitations. So we have to outline the restrictions and limitations. Of course, we have to follow the health protocols. Step 3 is complementary alliances with principals. So we can actually have a joint arrangement with hotels, resorts, restaurants, attractions, and tours and airlinks, or value-added arrangements between complementing principals. By the way, in the Philippines, you cannot travel to the prime destinations unless you have booked in advance your hotel or your accommodation. Step 4 would be restoring confidence in tourist markets. So travel agents and travel writers, familiarization trips. So you have to choose opinion leaders. Step 5, protecting profitability during marketing recovery. So in this step, we can offer incentives which will enable the business to sustain profitability or value added rather than discounts. Okay, step 6 rather. So re-image the business and the destination so we can actually retheme the advertising and promotion of our business. And then step 7, incentives which attract tourists. So that's we can offer value-added products. Step 8 would be publicize the positive. So you can actually publicize the positive news, trends of tourist arrivals, rebuilding and enhancements of infrastructure. Okay. And lastly, step 9, reporting and monitoring progress, publicize the changes and enhancements made. In terms of integration, we can work with transport providers to reduce the barriers to entry. And we can also coordinate with the governments at all levels, national, state, regional, local, or to deliver a consistent message to the consumer. In terms of collaboration also, our Ministry of Tourism or the Department of Tourism have collaborate also with travel bloggers, with the different travel bloggers, of course, to be able to promote the prime tourism destinations in our country. And lastly, reassure the local community. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the community, we encourage to buy goods from local producers and build an online platform to connect local food producers in the industry. And altruism and solidarity, encourage the VFR. Encourage VFR rules to build traffic and link with residents.
Excuse me, Dr. Karen Fernandez. I can't hear your voice clearly.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so encourage VFR or the visual flight rules to build traffic. My audio?
Yes, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. And with residents need to visit family following any lockdown. So as of the moment, we're currently on a lockdown. This is our second week of lockdown. So we are not allowed to have any essential travel. Okay, rather only essential travel is allowed. So there are so many restrictions nowadays because of the lockdown. So encourage local residents to visit the local attractions or spots first, so people are more aware of the real situation of the local epidemic or pandemic, so they are more confident to have some tourism-related activities with family in local areas. Next slide. Okay, for the consumers, we can allow people with antibodies against the coronavirus to travel freely if the issue is still unresolved. Have them bring a certificate issued by their home country. But actually, sorry.
Hello? Yes?
Okay. Sorry, connection is not stable. Sorry about that. Um, okay, so in terms of consumers, so we can allow people with antibodies against the coronavirus to travel freely if the issue is still unresolved. But currently, the Philippines have already started vaccinating the priority groups. So they have started health workers or the frontliners. Second of the priority in the list is the senior citizens aging from 60 and above. And the third of the priority groups is the are the people with comorbidities. And lastly are the rest of the population. So they are targeting um, to vaccinate the rest of the population by July this year. Okay, so assure consumers that the destination is safe. And we have to remind them of any actions the destination may still be implementing, such as virus checks and other security measures, and explain the sanitation processes. And we have to build on trust and relationship. I think this will be the last slide. So the timing of recovery is going to be dependent on consumers and businesses having confidence that their cities and venues are safe again. So with that, thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Karen Fernandez, for delivering such an inspiring talk. Very well, ladies and gentlemen. Now we come to the question and answer sessions. And each question will be directly answered. So if you have any questions for the audience, feel free to write it down in the chat box. Then I'll read the question later. So we are still waiting for the question. Oh, the question is here. From Pita STP Bandung, Dr. Fernandez, based on your experience, what's the biggest obstacle in rebuilding Philippines tourism during these circumstances?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. Actually, the Department of Tourism or our Ministry of Tourism, as I've mentioned a while ago, have reopened already the prime destinations late last year, late 2020. So the tourist destination allows us to, of course, the reopening of the tourist destinations allows us to restart the economy and help our tourism workers to regain their jobs. So going back to your question, it's very, we're still on the recovery stage. We're still on the recovery phase. The government have although the government have started the vaccine already, as I've mentioned also, international tourists, we're not yet open with international tourism, but rather domestic tourism, slowly but surely we're actually recovering from the uh, from the pandemic, no? So, but we have to, of course, we have to follow safety protocols in traveling. So, definitely, the pandemic, the tourism industry in the Philippines was devastated and actually greatly affected by the pandemic. So as well as, of course, as well as the other our neighboring countries such as Indonesia.
Mhm.
So
How about the local people? I mean, local tourists.
how about the local tourists?
Mhm.
As I've said, as of the moment, Manila and other nearby provinces are currently on lockdown.
Mhm.
So only essential travel is allowed. So we cannot visit other provinces for leisure. But actually, this month is supposedly the peak season
Mhm.
for our prime destinations in the Philippines. So during these months of April and May, usually uh, peak seasons or peak months, domestic and international tourists. We're expecting international and domestic tourists and those prime destinations such as Boracay and Palawan. But we're greatly affected because of the pandemic, so we were not allowed to travel for leisure.
Okay. So it's still growing, right? Okay. For the next question from Dea STP Bandung. Good afternoon, Dr. Karen. Many mice industries have been affected by COVID-19. What about the trend of mice during the post-pandemic period? Because new normal is different from back to normal.
Yes, definitely. In the Philippines, virtual conferences also, as well as in Indonesia, so virtual conferences and webinars is the trend, especially in the academics. So the growing trend of virtual conferences have actually emerged during the time of pandemic since last year.
Okay. Now, I think I would like to ask one question. As academician, what kind of collaboration can be built to recover from, let's say, this pandemic?
In academics and
Yeah,
in
this academician, then what kind of collaboration can be built during this recovery period?
yes, actually, I've seen many universities have collaborated in research as well as industry and academe have collaborated research on recovery plans and uh, how to rebuild the tourism industry during these times of pandemic.
Okay, we're still waiting for another question. Yes, this is from Rama, STP Bandung. There are so many new procedures for implementing mice in post-pandemic times. Will the mice will survive? So what kind of policy is most appropriate to increase market interest in the world of mice?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So, first and foremost, as I've mentioned, the trend since last year, so is the emergence of webinars or virtual events. So, in organizing virtual events or MICE events, so we have to vary our webinars or our virtual conferences. One way to increase our webinar attendance, no, is
Mm.
to vary the types of webinars that you offer. So this helps encourage more to attend. So going back to your question, no, we can still survive. I believe we can still survive. But after all, the next webinars sound similar in style and the format and the style. From the previous one should encourage and anyone. So hosting events will be challenging after the pandemic, I believe. Hosting events after the pandemic for most organizers, the risk component, the risk
Mm.
component is unbearable in virtual and hybrid solutions. will be part of the new normal. I believe even
Okay.
after the pandemic, the virtual and hybrid solutions will still be part of the new normal.
So, which stakeholders do you think share the most responsibility in the strategic recovery plan?
Okay, so I have mentioned the government. The government should be involved, of course, our Ministry of Tourism, of course, the industry, and also the community. And also, as mentioned in my slides, no, we in the academe, as academicians, so we have to impart also our knowledge, our contribution during this time of crisis.
Okay. I think we still have another question from Christian, STP Bandung. All countries or region doing closure for travel. How could a country or region organize an event? What do you think about this?
Okay, so it's very hard right now because currently, as I've said, we're still on the recovery phase. So we're still recovering from the pandemic. But however, given the right measures and involvement of health and safety experts, no, and guidelines in place, I still think that we will be able to organize or host or attend live events in the future.
Okay.
Hopefully by 2022. Hopefully.
Yes, we hope for the best as soon as possible. We still have one more question for Dr. Karen Fernandez. Yes, from Hendra Manurung from University of Pajajaran. Dr. Karen, in the midst of global pandemic and the scarcity of COVID-19 vaccine plus vaccine embargo, what will your point of view in optimizing MICE activities, in particular tourist destination? Since people life also should be maintained as the main priorities for all related stakeholders. Thank you.
Okay. So as for actually for us for meeting and event planners and all the stakeholders of the meetings and events industry, we're still witnessing the devastating impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. But I think little by little we will see the light at the end of the tunnel. So some countries are already easing lockdowns, such as I think Taiwan, Vietnam, but definitely not in the Philippines. So they have already easing lockdowns, and even the first live events and conferences are already live. So in this time of uncertainty, we have to encourage ourselves to for a new landscape, I believe, in meetings and events. So as mentioned, the future of events is virtual events. So I believe it's very challenging for all of us, especially for the events organizers, no, to be able to come up with an event, with a virtual event, and how are we going? The one of the challenges also is how to market or how to encourage participants in this event. So it's very challenging, as I mentioned. We're still witnessing the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. But I believe the new normal for physical events will entail thorough safety measures. So it is very important to prepare accordingly. So hopefully by next year or by 2023, so we'll be live again soon. Virtual, yes, virtual MICE activities.
Okay, thank you very much for answering all the questions, Dr. Karen Fernandez. And we finally come to the end of this plenary session. Let me conclude that this pandemic has profoundly affected all aspects of human life, including tourism, and strategic plans are acquired to recover from this problem. The strategic recovery plan of event tourism involves each tourism stakeholder to participate by creating strategic actions and having renewed policy in terms of sustainability, marketing, integration, community, and consumers. We'd like to thank Dr. Karen Fernandez for this interesting and informative talk, and the audience for attending this forum. But before we end this session, we'd like to express our gratitude to Dr. Karen Fernandez by delivering the certificate, virtual certificate, to Dr. Fernandez, and then we'll take a picture. Okay, shall we take the picture? Okay, let me guide. 1, 2, go. Once again. 1 and 2, go. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fernandez, for participating in this forum, and see you in the next occasion. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Karen Miranda Fernandez and Mrs. Priscilla Jessica J. Joseri.
Terima kasih Dr. Karen Miranda Fernandez dan Ibu Dr. Anda Priscilla Jessica J. Joseri.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session is the plenary session 7. In this session, we will be having Professor David Hein from Asia Pacific Institute for Events Management.
Hadirin yang terhormat, selanjutnya kita memasuki sesi pleno ke-7. Dalam sesi ini kita mengundang Profesor David Hein dari Asia Pacific Institute for Events Management.
This session will be conducted by Mrs. Nigustimada Kerti Utami, Lecturer of Bandung Institute of Tourism as the moderator.
Sesi ini akan dipandu oleh Ibu Nigustimada Kerti Utami, BAMM Par CHE, dosen Sekolah Tinggi Pariwisata NHI Bandung. Kepada Ibu Nigustimada Kerti Utami, BAMM Par CHE, dipersilahkan.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all the participants of the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021. Warmest greeting from Bandung Institute of Tourism. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. So welcome to the last plenary session. My name is Nigusti Madikerti Utami, and I'm the lecturer in Bandung Institute of Tourism. And I will be the moderator of this afternoon session. So, good morning, Professor Hein. So, how are you?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm very good. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, before you start the presentation, you will be speaking to us on the international event of MICE industry after COVID-19. And before the presentation, may I introduce you with the CV, curriculum vitae. So you are the president of the Asia Pacific Institute for Event Management, and also the president of the Sri Lanka Institute for Event Management Board of Study, adjunct professor, Faculty of Business and Management, and Faculty of Hotel and Tourism Management, University Technology Mara, Malaysia, managing editor the Asia Pacific International Event Management Journal, the chief executive of the United Kingdom Event Industry Academy. You are also distinguished professor at the Tsinghua University, Taiwan, and visiting professor at the Bali Tourism Institute of Tourism, Batam Tourism Polytechnic, Palembang Polytechnic of Tourism, and of course, Bandung Institute of Tourism. You invited frequently as a keynote in the conference presentation on the topics related to event management, sustainable tourism, and employability skill in Russia, Cyprus, Taiwan, Philippines, Malaysia, and of course, Indonesia. And the last one is an interesting fact of you, Professor Hein, because you have completed 9 books as an author, 12 keynote presentation delivered, 12 book chapter author, 17 referred journal papers and conference presentation published, and 45 research and consultancy projects undertaken with the total value $632,000. That's amazing achievement. So, Professor Hein, this session, you have 30 minutes for presentation and around 10 to 15 minutes for discussion session. So it's time for you.
Okay, so thank you very much for that very generous and warm introduction. And it's my great pleasure to be with you in Bandung today.
Yes.
And I look forward to sharing my thoughts with you on the international events industry.
Yes.
So I'll just go to share screen first of all.
Please.
And put my presentation up onto the screen. And I hope that you can see the screen in front of you.
Yes.
So
perfect.
Very good. Okay. So my presentation this afternoon is the international events industry post-COVID-19. And I need to say right at the beginning that I'm speaking from a European perspective. Okay. So much of what I'm going to be saying to you this afternoon is what we're thinking about here in Europe about the events industry internationally after COVID-19. So I'm going to speak for 30 minutes and then I'll be delighted to answer any questions that you would like to put to me.
Yes.
Regrettably, because of the international travel restrictions, I can't be with you in person. So I'm speaking with you from my home city, which is Leeds in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And I know that many of my great friends at Bandung Institute of Tourism, including the wonderful director, Mr. Faisal, have been to my home city and have shared time with me in the United Kingdom. So that's where I'm speaking with you from today. Dr. Karen has briefly introduced APM, and I'm just going to say a few more words about APM. We're a membership organization, and we have individual members in all of the countries that you can see on the screen in front of you. We also have universities, polytechnics, and colleges that are our institutional members, and we have institutional members in those countries there. So we are a membership organization, and our mission is to contribute to the professionalization of the events industry in Asia Pacific. And I'm delighted to say that STP NHI Bandung, the wonderful Bandung Institute of Tourism, is one of our founding members of APM, and STP NHI Bandung has been accredited by APM as an International Center of Excellence 4 stars because it offers an events curriculum that is of an international standard. So it's my great pleasure always to visit Bandung, to meet with the wonderful director, Mr. Faisal, and to meet with the faculty and the students. Further information about APM can be found on our website, www.theapm.com, and we're active on Facebook, and we have a closed Facebook group, APM Student Membership. So please send a friend request to that closed Facebook group. And we also have an open Facebook page, APM. And we look forward to communicating with you through our social media after today's conference. We also have our own conference coming up, so just a very quick shout out for any events and MICE researchers who want to join us on the 24th of November 2021 at our second Asia Pacific Virtual Events Conference. We're receiving abstracts at the moment, so please do submit your abstract to affect2papersubmission@gmail.com. So that was just a bit of pre-information about APM before I start my presentation. And the objective of my presentation today is to consider the future shape of the international event industry, and I'm stressing this, post-COVID-19. So this is when the pandemic is finished. We don't know when it will be finished, but I'm going to try to think about the future in my presentation today. So, selamat datang di presentasi saya. I hope that you enjoy my presentation. I'm going to include two quotations in my presentation today, and one quotation at the beginning and a second quotation at the end. The first quotation is from Arundhati Roy, an Indian author who in April 2020 said, "Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This pandemic is no different. It's a portal, a gateway between one world and the next." And I think that's a very important quotation. It's very important for our industries of events, hospitality and tourism, because whether we like it or not, our world in which we live, in events, hospitality and tourism, will change after the pandemic because of what we are experiencing during the pandemic. And really from this year, I think we need to think differently about designing and hosting professional events. We actually don't have any choice. We have to think differently. And the reason why we have to think differently is because in 2020, we've become used to participating in webinars. We've become used to being part of virtual events. And in the UK, close to where I live, we had a virtual pet show where we could look at dogs, cats, rabbits, and see which of the pets won the prize, a virtual pet show. And also this year, we've seen the rise of hybrid events, the combination of in-person and virtual events coming together. So these factors of the pandemic in 2022 will remain with us in the years ahead, and they've changed the way in which we operate. And one of the benefits that we've seen in 2020 is that when we organize a virtual event, we can actually have thousands of delegates from all over the world coming together to share the experience. So that's been one of the plus points of the pandemic for the events industry. We can now have a global audience. And the benefits of virtual events are on the screen now. I'm not going to talk about all of these. I'll just pick out one or two. And in 2020, we had no alternative during the COVID-19 pandemic. The events industry had to pivot to being virtual instead of in person. And one of the benefits of virtual events is that they are fairly quick to organize. We have lower costs because we don't have to book a venue. We don't have to provide food and beverage. They're more sustainable. Whilst I would love to be in Bandung with you today, I'm in the UK. I'm not traveling by aeroplane. And actually, there are fewer risks involved in organizing virtual events than in person. So we've seen so many webinars, so many virtual events, and so many hybrid events in 2020. And one of the reasons why we've seen so many virtual events is because of the events industry technology ecosystem. And the pandemic has really brought forward technological developments that we might have seen in 2025 to 2020 and 2021. So we've seen an acceleration in the implementation of event technology in 2020. And the events industry technology ecosystem has fueled and has really supported the development of these virtual webinar hybrid events. But we now need to think to the future, and we now need to think, well, how relevant will virtual events, e-events, be in the future? And so this is where we need to look at our crystal ball and start thinking about what the future might look like. And there's a commonly held view in the professional events industry that virtual events will maintain and grow in popularity, but only for certain types of business events. So we're going to see e-events in the future. They're going to be important, but really only for certain types of business events. And we've seen in 2020 that we can meet, we can communicate, we can network through webinars. And when the pandemic is over, a company that might have sent its employees to another country to attend a conference or a meeting, the boss of that company might say, well, just meet using Zoom, just meet using WebEx. You don't need to travel 2,000 miles, 2,000 kilometers to attend. Do it virtually. And also in 2020, we've seen the important role of hybrid, which is the combination of in-person and virtual, and likewise, meetings, conferences in the future will be hybrid with an audience in person and thousands perhaps of participants from all over the world joining that meeting virtually. So there's going to be a continuing demand for virtual events in the future. But there are challenges with e-events. And again, I won't go through all of these on the screen in front of you now, but two important limitations are digital fatigue and concentration. We can't watch our screens for very long periods of time before we have to change our behavior. We have to get up, we have to stretch our legs, go for a cup of tea, cup of coffee. So a limitation of e-events is the concentration span of the participants. And one of the reasons for that is that we're just looking at the screen in front of us and there's no face-to-face interaction. And another limitation of the e-event, which is not a limitation of an in-person event, but a benefit of an in-person event, is that our industry is based on immersive experiences. And that's one of the main reasons why we go to an event, to share the experience with our friends, to be immersed in the activity that is taking place at the event, and to have a wonderful time in a fantastic venue, sharing the experience with all of the other participants. We are looking forward to being immersed in events when it's possible to do so. Also, in-person events are points of connection. When I give a presentation in a lecture theatre, I can look at all of the participants, I can see who's concentrating, I can see who's paying attention, I can ask questions directly, and I can get a sense of the mood and the feeling of the audience.
Yeah.
And that's not possible in a virtual e-based event such as a webinar or a virtual conference. And in-person MICE events are business opportunities. We go to exhibitions to look at products and services, to meet representatives of companies, and to do business. We can't do that in the same way using virtual technology and e-events. So in-person events are fantastic business opportunities. And in-person cultural events preserve and conserve traditions. And we can't do that in the same way when we're communicating through the screens in front of us using digital technology. So for those reasons and many more, in-person events will return after COVID-19. There will always be a demand for live in-person events. That demand will not disappear because of the advantages of in-person events and the limitations of virtual events. But the challenge is that we are in the pandemic. The pandemic is here in 2021. It will be here with us in 2022. And all of the messages that we're receiving in Europe about the future is that we will be living with coronavirus for many years into the future. So this is going to be a factor that will impact upon the future of the international events industry. And if we think about the business sector, a company won't be prepared to send its employees to attend an international event if there is a risk that their employee will catch coronavirus and all of the financial implications of them catching the virus. The employee could sue, could take their employer to court for sending them to a conference where they contracted coronavirus, and that could be very financially problematic for the company. So we're in the situation where until transmission of COVID-19 is greatly reduced, I don't think we're going to see the international events industry opening. And the challenge is that, yes, we've got the vaccine. Yes, some countries are racing ahead with the vaccination program, but it's a global pandemic. Not until the vast majority of the population of the world has received their vaccination will we be able to perhaps return to the world and life that we enjoyed in 2019. So it's a big challenge to ensure that everybody in the world is vaccinated and that the virus is under control. And all sectors in events, hospitality and tourism have been affected, but we are starting to see the opening up of international travel, but it's going to be challenging. And we're still in the situation where different countries around the world have imposed temporary travel restrictions for entry into their nations. And the big question is, how long will these last? Will they run into 2022? I think so. I think that we're still in a situation where countries will restrict the number of people who come into their country because they will be frightened of new variants of coronavirus being imported into their country through international travel. So we're going to see travel restrictions, I think, for some time into the future. And from a business traveler's perspective, we are now, even though not many people are traveling, we do see queues at airports for check-in, and then queues on arrival for health monitoring. And will a business person who's going to a business event be prepared for a situation like this? And I think that the answer probably is no. Non-essential business travel won't take place. And we could argue that the MICE industry is non-essential business travel, and international business people won't want to queue for hours at airports, and they won't want to wear their masks on the aeroplane. It's not what they would wish to do. And we also have at the moment mandatory quarantine. And each country has different regulations. With some countries, you have to quarantine on arrival for up to 10 days. And then when you come home, you also have to quarantine. So once again, will a business traveler who's going to a business event be able to quarantine for up to 20 days when they are attending a business event that might just last for 4 days? And the simple answer is no. They won't do it because they can communicate using virtual technology. And the final challenge that we're going to face is that the return of international events in each country will depend on the size of the economic storm that will follow COVID-19. We're in the health storm at the moment, but when the health storm starts to reduce, there's going to be an economic storm because businesses have not been earning money. Businesses have been closing. Businesses have been making people jobless. And will the economic storm be a typhoon, a storm surge, or a tsunami? We don't know. Each country will be different, but we have to expect that there will be less money to be spent on international events after COVID-19 because of the economic crisis in different countries. So I'm sorry if this all sounds gloomy, but I think it's realistic.
Yes.
We have to be realistic. The world that we will face after COVID-19 won't be the same as we experienced in 2019. It's going to be a different world. And we're also going to see intense competition between destinations. Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand will all be competing to host international events. Different countries will be offering different financial incentives. Host your event in our country and we will give you so much money to subsidize the cost. Destinations will be giving special offers. Come to Bali, come to Bandung, and this is what we can provide you if you come to our destination. And the other aspect from a destination perspective is that in the future, post-COVID-19, destinations will have to be safe. You will have to be seen to be safe as a destination in terms of hygiene, and that there are no serious COVID-19 infections in your locality. You'll have to be smart in terms of using technology. And I think when COVID-19 is over, it will show the world that we have to take climate change seriously, and we have to work in more sustainable ways in all sectors of society to have a world that will continue in a sustainable way. So there's challenges on the destination as well as challenges for the event organizing companies. So there's many challenges ahead. And the vaccines are fantastic. The vaccines are being rolled out. There's lots of controversy in Europe at the moment about the AstraZeneca vaccine, but we are on the road to recovery. So that is very important. The data indicates that the vaccines suppress the transmission of the coronavirus, but not until everybody or most people in the world have received their vaccination can we start to relax our social distancing and our other restrictions that are in place. And this just illustrates what's happened in the UK. So this is up until the 5th of April, 3 days ago. We started vaccinating our population in January. And since we put in place the vaccination program, the number of infections per day reduced from 60,000 a day on the 15th of January to just over 2,000 a day 3 days ago, partly because of lockdown, but also because of vaccination. So we do need to make sure that the vaccination rollout is global and not just country specific.
Okay. Excuse me,
The other
sir,
thing
your
which again
time
will
is, excuse me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about
Nearly
4
finished.
minutes.
Yeah, no problem. The other thing that we have to do is to work out the international certification for vaccination, and the passport is what it's called. This also will open us up to international travel. And at some stage, airports will start to look like this again. Orderly queues and people being prepared to travel. And hopefully in the not too distant future, I'll be able to return to wonderful STP Bandung with my friends from APM, and once again enjoy the hospitality and the friendship that we always enjoy whenever we come to the wonderful Bandung Institute of Tourism. But destinations will have to reinvent themselves and rebrand in order to attract international tourists. Our world won't be the same after COVID-19. It will be a different world. Safe, smart, sustainable. That's my message today. We have to have safe destinations, smart destinations, and sustainable destinations. And that will result in the international events industry returning to what it was before COVID-19. So in conclusion, very simple conclusion.
Sure.
Countries around the world are being very strategic about the recovery. So we have to understand what's happening internationally about the recovery. We have to understand the perceptual positioning of each country. Why should I go to Singapore instead of Bangkok? What is the perceptual positioning in the recovery strategy? We will see domestic events opening up first. From an external perspective, we have to be aware of the economic recession. We have to be aware of increased competition. And we also have to benefit from the substitutability of event technology for in-person events. And my final slide is, in 2021, events will be local, regional, and national. In 2022, we will start to see international in-person events returning, but behavioral factors and hygiene standards will be important. And hopefully, in 2 years' time, we will be back to where we were in 2019. And my last quote is 200 years old, from Charles Darwin, that famous biologist. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one that is the most adaptable to change. And that's as important today as it was 200 years ago. We have to adapt to change. The world that we face is different to that which we knew in 2019. So, terima kasih sudah mendengarkan apakah ada pertanyaan. And I hope I pronounced that correctly. So, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Heinz. It is very inspiring. Now we enter the question and answer session. The first question is from Ismayanti from Sahid University, Jakarta. As you said that the soul in e-event is difficult to get, particularly when there is a need for interaction between buyer and seller, between speaker and participant, then what is the best way to deliberate in-person event using virtual? How to avoid misleading interpretation from e-event? So that's the question.
So there's two questions there.
Yes. Please.
What is the best way for participation and how to avoid misinterpretation? I'll answer the first question first, obviously. And my answer to that is that we know so much more now about organizing virtual conferences and virtual events. The event technology ecosystem has brought to us many tools and many facilities that can help us develop engaging, interactive online events. And I haven't got time to discuss those with you today, but we are now able to have much more interaction and immersion at virtual events than we have had previously. In terms of misinterpretation, I would say the principles are the same as for any type of communication. We have to be clear, we have to be direct, we have to make sure that when we are saying something, that the people that we are communicating with understand what we have said and what that means for them. So we might have to repeat what we've said. We might have to check with the other people. Do you understand? Have you got any questions? Do you understand precisely what I'm saying? Yes. So again, it comes down to a communication style that is clear, direct, and keeps on checking to make sure that there's no misinterpretation.
Okay, thank you very much for the answer. And the second question is from Reza Nuriski from STP Bandung. Good afternoon, sir. As an educator, what are the important subjects to be learned by event management students to face the challenge of future event industries after pandemic?
Yeah, a very important question. Thank you very much. And two parts to my answer. First of all, the students need to continue to learn what they're learning at the moment. What we currently teach is essential, and what we currently teach won't go out of date and will always be in demand. But there's two new areas that every curriculum should include. We need to improve the teaching of health, safety, security, and risk management at events. Events won't be able to open I think for international delegates, unless we can demonstrate that the venue and the destination is safe, hygienic, and is well managed from a risk management perspective. So risk management needs to increase in terms of its content within the curriculum. And then secondly, we need to enhance as well the teaching that we provide on digital technology. We have to include more opportunities in the curriculum for students to learn up-to-date methods for including technology in events that are being organized. And that might mean that we, as the teachers, we have to do some retraining ourselves, and we have to ensure that we are up to date with all of the modern technologies that the event industry is using and will be using increasingly in the future. So keep doing what we're doing, but add new subjects on health, safety, risk management, and digital technology.
Thank you. And next questions from Pratama. The trend of implementing event during a pandemic and post-pandemic depends more on adequate technology and infrastructure. In fact, there are not many adequate. What do you think about that?
Yeah, again, it's a very valid point to make, that if we are wanting a very interactive, high technology virtual event, we need to have the good broadband width to support the Wi-Fi connection. And again, if we're organizing a professional event where we are charging participants a registration fee, we need to make sure that the event technology platform is the best that it can be with the resources that we've got available to us. So there are some fantastic virtual events that take place. You can have a virtual exhibition. We've, I'm sure, all seen fantastic live streaming of music concerts. I mentioned a virtual pet show at the beginning of my presentation. All of those are possible, but we do need to have an event technology platform that seamlessly integrates everything from pre-event, during the event, to post-event. And there are professional event technology companies that will provide this technology for you. So if you don't have the expertise, you can subcontract the hosting of your event to a professional technology vendor who will organize the technology for you. You develop the content, the partner helps with the technology. Clearly there's a cost, but if you are organizing a professional event and you're going to be charging participants a fee for registration, then you might have no other alternative. You might have to work in partnership. But what we've seen in the pandemic is that applications like Zoom, WebEx have developed, and they are much more flexible now, and they give much more opportunities to have parallel sessions, interactive sessions. So a lot depends upon what type of event you want to organize and who your market is, and whether your market is one that will pay a registration fee to attend your event. But yeah, the infrastructure is an important consideration when organizing an event, but the event technology ecosystem has accelerated so fast in 2020 that we are now using technologies that probably we wouldn't have been using until 2025.
Okay, I think that's the last questions. So, okay, the last question I think, yeah. Last from Ibu Lastri di Sparbud Pangandaran. So, what kind of measurement tools are suitable used to measure the success of virtual event? So.
Yeah, thank you very much. And
Yes.
Another very good question. And I'm going to say that the important thing when measuring the success of any event, whether it's in person or virtual, is that you are measuring the objectives that you set for the event. So every event should have objectives. The objectives should be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And your evaluation methods are those that you select to check to see if your objectives have been met. So there's various ways that we can do that. If you have an objective of having 200 participants at your virtual event, then you can identify easily if 200 people have registered and if 200 people have engaged. If your objective is to generate 20 new clients to be part of your event, be part of your business after the virtual event, you can measure that. If your objective is to raise awareness of your organization through social media likes, you can measure that as well. So the important thing is to set objectives for your event that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Pay careful attention to your objectives and then choose whichever research method fits with that. You can have post-event evaluation questionnaires. You can monitor the number of people who've attended. You can monitor the likes on social media. So there's many different ways of measuring the success of an event.
Okay, sir, because you're very famous and this is an interesting topic, so this is the last question. Actually, this have one question, but I think we have to close and conclude the session. So sorry, I think the committee will accommodate the questions later. So I just repeat what you quote in your presentation. So actually, pandemic is not something to be afraid, sir. It's a portal, a gateway between one world to the next, with the safe, smart, and sustainable standard. Is it correct, sir?
Yeah, I mean, people talk about the new normal.
Yes.
And yeah, we will have a new normal.
Yes.
When that comes, it's difficult to say, but there will be a new normal at some time.
Okay. So thank you very much, Professor Hein, for your interesting and realistic insight for at this presentation. So as a expression, so after the session, we would like to express our gratitude and appreciation. We'd like to give you the virtual certificate. So thank you very much for your contribution. And we also like to have a photo session. So 1, 2, 3. Once more with 2 thumbs up. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much, Professor Hein. So
okay, my pleasure.
Okay. So thank you very much once again with the information that have been delivered, and I'm sure that the information will be useful for us. So wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hatur nuhun, selamat sore.
Thank you, Professor David Hein and Mrs. Ni Gustimada Kerti Utami.
Terima kasih Profesor David Hein dan Ibu Ni Gusti Madekerti Utame BA MM.Par CHE.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session is the report and conclusion by Mrs. Enda Trihayuning Tias, Chief Executive of the Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021.
Hadirin yang terhormat, sesi selanjutnya adalah pembacaan laporan dan kesimpulan oleh Ibu Endah Trihayuning Tias SOS MM.Par, Ketua Pelaksana The Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021. Kepada Ibu Endah Trihayuning Tias SOS MM.Par, dipersilahkan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. It is a great honor for me to be a part of Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021 as Chief Executive of this event. In these past 2 days, we have been seeing the very inspiring and insightful speeches and presentation from distinguished keynote speakers, and presenters. Let me conclude some of the important points in this regard. For plenary session, with the topic of tourism and creative economy, recovery strategy in COVID-19 pandemic. His Excellency Minister of Tourism Creative Economy Republic of Indonesia, Dr. Sandiaga Salahuddin Uno, stated that as one of the main economic driving sectors in Indonesia, tourism need to restart as soon as possible. Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy emphasized that sustainability will be the key to rebuild our tourism, along with the acceleration of CHSE certification in tourism destinations and sporting facilities. In accordance with the statement from the Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia, Dr. Amar Abdul Ghaffar, confessed that Malaysia Prime Minister has stated that sustainability will be one of the weapons in rebuilding Malaysia tourism. Recovery itself is not as fast as imagined, but Professor Dr. Benetatos counts heavily on the government side as a policy and decision makers to support tourism recovery process to the maximum. The future of tourism needs to balance the experience of visitors with the need of industry to keep the environmental and good well-being to local community as visioned by Professor Seleni Matus. To formulate recovery strategies for tourism, Dr. Karen Fernandez suggests that UNWTO call on tourism must be the part of the recovery plan. Mitigation preparedness come alongside as important as handling COVID-19 pandemic. As an educational institution which located in West Java and exposed to the risk of natural disasters. Head of STPB, Mr. Faisal, see it as the main reason to set coordinated action plan as a figure to create readiness in handling crisis situation, which is also stated by Dr. Dhani Ramdan, where creating resilient community will help to reduce the social damage caused by natural disasters. For parallel season, tourism topics Speaking about recovery and restarting our tourism cannot be separated from destination resilience toward a global pandemic. From the paper presented, we show that tourism destination in Indonesia has their own way to survive the current situation. Community-based movements, product innovations, different approach promotion and marketing strategy, as well as health protocols implementation has been a huge game changer to shift stagnation into small scale yet productive movements in tourism sector. For hospitality topics as an industry which rely on man-to-man interaction to deliver the services, hospitality industry met its biggest obstacle these past 2 years because the pandemic forced us to lessen the direct interaction, fear of being exposed to the virus affecting occupancy rate to decline to the lowest. Hotels and restaurants has tried to survive, but many of them are collapsed. Government support and tax breaks play a huge role to keep the business running. Whilst it is hard to increase the number of international market because of the travel ban to Indonesia, local hotel and restaurant have shifted their target market into domestic market. The last travel topics, the growth of travel between countries has decreased drastically in line with the implementation of the travel restrictions imposed by almost all countries. Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy Republic of Indonesia especially states that ecotourism is a type of tourism that can survive the post-COVID period. It is because the character of the activities of ecotourism tourists tends not gather and spread. So from a health perspective, ecotourism fulfills the physical distancing principles. Besides, ecotourism is a non-consumptive, non-extractive tourism activity. Creates an ecological conscience and holds eco-centric values and ethic with nature. As the conclusion from all topics has been delivered, it is cue for me to finish my report. To end my part, I'm pleased and proudly inform you that the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021 has ended successfully with the help from all of you. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Enda Trihayuning Tias.
Terima kasih Ibu Enda Trihayuning Tias, Esos MMPAR.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session is the speech by Mr. Ervin Rosvian, Deputy Director for Academic of Bandung Institute of Tourism, and followed by the official closing of ceremony, the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021.
Hadirin yang terhormat, sesi selanjutnya adalah sambutan oleh Bapak Ervin Rosvian, MHUM CHE, Pembantu Ketua 1 Bidang Akademik Sekolah Tinggi Pariwisata NHI Bandung, sekaligus menutup acara The Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021 secara resmi. Kepada Bapak Ervin Rosvian, MHUM CHE, dipersilahkan.
guests of honor, the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of Republic of Indonesia, Honorable Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, honorable speakers, honorable functional and structural officers, lecturers and students in STP NHI Bandung, the distinguished guests, paper reviewers, moderators, and participants of the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021, Excellencies, members of the steering committee, organizing committee, co-organizers, and vendors of the second NHI Tourism Forum. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings to all of us. Good afternoon, Sampurasun. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the board of this event, I thank you very much for keynote speakers, Dr. Sandiaga Salahuddin Uno, BBA, MBA, Permanent Secretary, the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, Dr. Randa Niwayangiri Adnyani, MSc, CHE, all speakers, Dato Dr. Amar Abdul Ghaffar from Malaysia Tourism Promotion Board, Adjunct Professor, UITM, Professor Selene Matus from George Washington University, USA, Professor Dr. Benetatos from IMI, Switzerland, Dr. Karen Miranda Fernandez from Asia Pacific Institute for Events Management, Philippines, Professor David Hines from Asia Pacific Institute of Event Management England, Dr. Hadani Ramdan MT as the Chief Executive of Regional Agency for Disaster Countermeasure Indonesia. Let us thanks to Mara University that doing the collaboration for this event. It's such an honor to us. Hope we can doing another collaborations in educational event. Then thanks for all paper presenters from STP NHI Bandung, Universitas Pajajaran, Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia, Akademi Pariwisata Nasional Banjarmasin, Pariwisata IAIN Batu Sangkar, University Teknologi Mara, Universitas Pelita Harapan, Akademi Pariwisata NHI Bandung, Politeknik Syahid, Sekolah Tinggi Ilmu Ekonomi Pariwisata, Akademi Pariwisata Bunda Mulia, Udayana University, Balai Arkeologi Sumatera Utara, Politeknik Negeri Lampung, Medan Tourism Politeknik, Universitas Juanda, Politeknik Pariwisata Medan, Politeknik Pariwisata Palembang, and Polytechnic Pariwisata Batam. Along with this, we also want to thank the paper reviewers from STP NHI Bandung, Mara University, Pelita Harapan University, Institut Teknologi Bandung, Politeknik Negeri Bandung, Syahid University, Pradita Institute. We would also like to thank the moderators who were involved in both the plenary and parallel sessions. This event was attended by 277 persons in Zoom meeting and 50 persons in offline who came from various backgrounds such as lecturers, students, and industry players, government and professional association representatives. And I would like to thank all the committee members for organizing this second NTF 2021 and ensuring that it proceeded smoothly. Around 100 people were involved and benefited in organizing this event, namely the steering committee, Organizing Committee from STP Bandung, Co-Organizing Committee from students of STP Bandung, and also the vendors from 5 event organizers. Let me express my highest gratitude to you for investing your time and efforts to make this event successful. It has been an honor and a privilege to have worked with all of you. Distinguished guests, please give a round of applause to the organizers of this event. Thank you. We hope that this event can be useful for the advancements of Indonesian tourism in general and STP NHI Bandung in particular. Well, by saying Alhamdulillah, I declare this event, Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021, with the theme, The Rebound of New Tourism Era, officially closed. I apologize for any shortcomings that happened during this two-day event. We look forward to your participation on the third NTF STP Bandung. Now, allow me to chant. So many cars in the highway, they are attending a fest. Although we are far away, we pray for you to be safe. Stay safe and healthy. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. Hatur nuhun.
Thank you, Mr. Ervin Rosvian.
Terima kasih Bapak Ervin Rosvian, MHUM CHE.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the second NHI Tourism Forum 2021. We would like to thank Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia, Permanent Secretary Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy of Indonesia, Director of Bandung Institute of Tourism, moderator, and all the audiences for the willingness to participate in this event.
Hadirin yang terhormat, demikianlah rangkaian acara The Second NHI Tourism Forum 2021. Kami ucapkan terima kasih kepada Menteri Pariwisata dan Ekonomi Kreatif Republik Indonesia, Sekretaris Kementerian Pariwisata dan Ekonomi Kreatif Republik Indonesia, Ketua Sekolah Tinggi Pariwisata NHI Bandung, para moderator, peserta dan penyaji atas partisipasinya pada acara ini. I am Anthony Samuel
and Lamunda Aritafai. On behalf of the committee, we would like to apologize if there is an inconvenience during this event.
Terima kasih dan sampai jumpa. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Santi 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 Om. Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Salam Indonesia maju dan salam sehat.